Well, for us here at First Church, it's Vacation Bible School Week. A great time for the kids, great time for all the volunteers who are working with them. And it's a good time for me to ask you a question. So, Mary's mother had 3 daughters. She named the first one April, the second one May. What was the name of the third daughter? Now, if you guessed June, well, no, because I told you right up front, Mary's mother had 3 daughters. It's Mary. That's a trick question. I know it is. And you know how trick questions work because we like them. There's something in the wording. You got to watch carefully because there's a trick to it, and it's designed to stump you. And then when you hear the answer, you say, oh, I get it. Sometimes we then go use those same questions, see if we can stump someone else. Let's try a different one. We got 12 months in the calendar year. Now, some months have 31 days. Some months have 30 days. How many months have 28 days? If you said 1, well, no, it's more than that. They all 12 have 28 days and more. Once again, a trick question. Now, love them or hate them, well, they're all around us. And I need to finish with one that maybe you can get this one, and that is this. Picture a chicken. Which side of a chicken has more feathers? The answer? The outside. There's not any feathers on the inside. Well, why are we doing trick questions today? Because that's our series for the month, tricky questions. And not the kind of trick questions like I just gave you. No, the kind that Jesus' enemies gave to him. We're looking at Matthew chapter 22. It's on that final week that Jesus was on this earth. It's Tuesday, and he's in the temple teaching. Picture the scene as Jesus is there, and he's got those who want to hear what he has to say. But then up come the religious leaders who want to try to find a way to challenge him and oppose him, to turn the crowd off to Jesus. And one of the ways they did that was by throwing trick questions at him. It says in chapter 22, verse 15, that they conspired to try to trap Jesus in his words. Now, we've already started with one of the trick questions. We're ready for another one today. And it's found in verse 17. It's a question about taxes. And the question is this: is it right, is it lawful that we should pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, you put that in any time period, that's a divisive question right there. You talk about taxes, and in any given room, there'll be those who say that's our duty to the government, let's do it, and others who say, I hate paying taxes. I say we stop doing it. Taxes will divide an audience just like that. There's a lot of other questions related to the government that have that same effect. We've seen some of those ourselves in our modern times. Like for example, the very tax question, should we raise taxes or lower? Well, every time a new administration comes in, then the question gets raised again, putting them up, putting them down, and the vote gets split by our politicians. We saw the same thing when it came to some of those mandates from the government about what to do with COVID. A mask mandate, and audiences are divided. Whether or not you got to have a vaccine, and once again, we're split. Oh, there's a lot of questions from the get-go. If someone asks you to answer the question and you got to do it in public, some are going to like your answer and some are not going to like it. And that's the kind of question they gave Jesus, a question about taxes to Caesar. Now, the particular way they phrased the question is what we would call a dilemma. A dilemma is a question where you have set it up so there's 2 possible answers and neither answer is good. You're looking at your 2 options, and I don't like this one, but I don't like that one either. Can you give me a third option? No. That's your 2 choices. Now, which one do you choose? That's called a dilemma. It's a part of logic. It's also a part of ethics. And in an ethics class, you're often given ethical dilemmas, and then you're forced to think, which hard choice would I make? Like, for example, the old classic one about saving a life and losing a life. Whether it be a medical situation or whether it be someone trying to rescue people, but you can only carry one to safety, you've got to leave one behind. The question is, so which one do you save? Which one do you lose? And nobody wants to make that choice. Bring it down to less tragic and just more commonplace. Think about a team at high school or college. Coach has a set of rules and guidelines for behavior and conduct for his players. And if you break the rules, you'll have to miss the next game. During most of the season, that doesn't much matter. But you get down to the end, tournament time, championship on the line, and you've got players who break the rules, especially if it involves some of your star players. You going to bench them or not? If you do, it's going to cost you a game. A lot of people are going to disagree with that. So if you say, no, we'll make an exception, you'll have those who disagree with that because now you're showing favoritism. There's a double standard. It's a dilemma. Which do you do? Or take, for example, someone who receives a confidence and is not supposed to tell. A priest taking a confession. A lawyer talking to a client. But you get the occasion where somebody confides something criminal and very evil. Maybe it has to do with rape or murder, and not just what was done, but what may also happen later on another occasion. And the question is, do you break the confidence and tell the police so you can save somebody? You do that, nobody will trust you again. Do you keep your confidence because that's what you're sworn to do, and somebody else gets hurt? Life often throws at us dilemmas where I see two options and neither one is good. I don't like them. We sometimes refer to this as being on the horns of a dilemma. And you're supposed to picture like a bull, for example, a steer, some animal that's got two horns. This animal's got you up against the wall. He's trying his best to get those horns into you, and you've got the bull by the horn, as we say, and you're holding him back. But not much longer. I need to get out of here. I need to slip to the right or the left. I'm going to have to let go of one side, but which one do I let go of? If I let go of the left, he'll get me with that horn. The right, the same thing there, and I'm kind of stuck with two bad choices. That's a dilemma. And that's the tricky question they put to Jesus. Something already controversial, taxes to Caesar, but framed in such a way that Jesus has two choices, yes or no. And either answer is going to turn off somebody in this crowd. If he says, yes, we should pay taxes to Caesar because that's the law, that's what we're required to do. Oh, there'll be those who object to say, well, for a guy who claims to be a preacher of righteousness, who claims to be the Messiah, you're pretty soft. You're kind of a Roman loyalist, aren't you? You don't have the nerve to stand up to Rome and say, you don't belong in this land. This is God's land. Get out of here. If Jesus were to say on the other hand, okay, yeah, no, don't pay taxes to Caesar, this oppressor. Then you have those say, oh, that's easy advice for you to say. Traveling preacher owns no property. But when the tax man comes knocking on my door and I tell him no, he'll come back with soldiers, drag me and my family out in the street, take what he wants. You know, if we stand up to Rome like that, well, they'll bring harm upon my family, my community. So either answer he gives, yes or no, somebody is going to object strongly. And the Pharisees know that. Now, speaking of the Pharisees, let me tell you about those who came after Jesus on this occasion. It was the Pharisees, but there's also another group, the Herodians. The Pharisees and Herodians joined forces to come at Jesus with this dilemma of a question. Now, the Pharisees, you know something about perhaps. They were a religious sect. They were part of the religious leaders, Pharisees, Sadducees, elders, the chief priests, etc. And they were trained in school, Bible scholars. They tended to be very conservative, traditionalist. They do not like Rome. Rome doesn't belong here. They're oppressors. And they definitely don't support paying taxes to Rome. Now, on the other hand, there's the Herodians. They're quite the opposite. The Herodians were a political party, if you will. They're not into religion as much as they're into politics. They support the King Herod dynasty. Now, the King Herod dynasty was appointed by Rome. They're there because Rome empowers them and supports them. So they support the Herod king. They support Rome. And yeah, taxes are fine. And so you've got two opposite parties, both there asking a question against Jesus. Now, these are two groups that wouldn't normally work together, so why would they work together now? You've heard the expression, the enemy of my enemy, that guy could be my friend. Yeah, when you've got a common enemy, you can set aside your differences for a while and work together against your common enemy. And that's what the Pharisees and Herodians decided to do on this occasion, work together against Jesus. Now, I don't know much about the Herodians. We don't have very much information about them. I know something about the Herod kings and what they thought about Jesus. You remember the famous King Herod the Great, the one that was there for the birth story of Jesus and sent his soldiers in to slaughter all the baby boys in the town of Bethlehem 2 years and under to try to stop this Christ child who was born. Now, he was definitely an enemy of Jesus. His son, Herod Antipas, he's the one that took over the throne when Jesus is doing his ministry. And he and Jesus have some issues. In fact, it was this Herod, Antipas Herod, he's the one that arrested John the Baptist, put him in prison, and then cut off his head. He's the one that Jesus was sometimes warned about. He's preaching on one occasion, and people say, you might need to leave this area because Herod is nearby, and he might come after you. And Jesus responds, well, you go tell that fox, I'm going to finish what I started, and then I'm gone. And you can see the tension between the two. In fact, it was at the trials of Jesus that Pilate will send him to Herod Antipas and give Herod a chance to interrogate him and decide what to do with Jesus. Yeah, the Herod kings did not like Jesus. The Herodians joined them in that opposition. Of course, the Pharisees, we know that so well, because the Pharisees were opposing Jesus all through his ministry every day of the week. They're always there looking at him suspiciously, criticizing his every move, trying to find ways to oppose him and bring him down. These two joined forces to work against Jesus on this Tuesday. Now, I call this a wicked alliance, an unholy alliance of two parties with nothing good going on here. We know that their intent is evil because we were told in verse 15 they're trying to find a way to trap Jesus in his words. Not only do they have evil intent, but they come at Jesus with deceit and flattery. We're told in verse 16 that whoever it is that's going to frame the question pretends to actually be an interested student just wanting to know the truth. He says to Jesus, now we all know that you're a man of truth and you always speak the truth of God and you're not swayed by what other people think or say or do. So I'm going to ask you a serious question. It wasn't a serious question. It was a trick question, a dilemma they designed on purpose to trap him and bring him down. In addition to that, the question they gave, designed to stump him. A dilemma that's going to turn off somebody in the crowd as soon as he chooses his answer, yes or no. Well, these guys were up to no good, and Jesus knew it. We're told in our passage that Jesus recognized their evil intent. So he spoke to them and he said, you hypocrites, why is it you're trying to trap me? And indeed they were. As far as they were concerned, they had him pushed back in a corner. He had no way out. Now they're just waiting for him to answer the question. And they didn't care which way he answered. Yes, pay the taxes. No, don't pay the taxes. Either way, they thought they were going to win and bring Jesus down, trapping him in his words. Didn't go as they planned, because as clever as they thought they were not as clever as Jesus. And he came up with a brilliant answer. The answer began first with a question to the very men who were there trying to trip him up, to try to trap him in his words. He said to them, how about one of you show me a coin? Reach into your pockets and find a coin. Since you brought up the subject of taxes, why don't you give me one of the coins that you would use to pay taxes? And so they reach in their pockets, maybe 3 or 4 of them that held one up. But finally, he points to one of them and says, okay, that'll work. What you got there? Well, we're told it was a denarius coin. Now, the denarius coin, that's Roman currency. That's not a Jewish coin. That's a Roman coin. It's a silver coin. Very commonly used in those days throughout the Roman Empire, but especially right there in Israel. It's the coin that was often used to pay a day's wages. You work for a day in the fields, you're going to get paid at the end of the day. They'll hand you the denarius coin. Jesus, for example, talked about that in one of his parables, about the laborers in the field that are hired to work for a day, and at the end of the day, they're all given a denarius. It's also the coin that once you get paid in your payroll, you're going to go out there and spend it and buy things. And you may remember the parable of the Good Samaritan, where when the Samaritan picks up that man who's been injured along the highway, takes him to an inn somewhere, and he asks the innkeeper, will you keep him and take care of him and heal his wounds, and I'll come back later? And he gave him 2 denarius coins and said, I'll come back and give you more if you need it. Yes, this was a common coin that would be in the pockets of the men who were there before Jesus. So they bring him out and they show it to him. And then Jesus says, well, take a look at the coin you hold in your hand there and tell me whose image is on that coin and who wrote the inscription on that coin. Now, this is where if they hadn't figured it out already, they've got to know, uh-oh, we're in trouble. Lights are starting to come on because they're going to have to answer, and they do, but it's an answer that sets them up for trouble. The answer is, well, the image is of Caesar. And on the denarius of Jesus' day, it will be the Emperor Tiberius. He was the emperor of the day. His picture will be on the coin. And so, yeah, you've got the Roman emperor, the Caesar, on your coin. And not only that, but the inscription is written by Rome. In other words, this is a Roman coin. In your pockets, you're carrying Roman money. Now, I don't know if he went on to explain things or just let that go and let them figure it out on their own. But you see where he's going with this. See, the direction he's going is this. You are thinking, okay, yeah, Rome is an oppressor. We don't want to have anything to do with Rome. We're not going to pay their taxes. We're not going to associate with them, except you already do associate with them. You're already tied to Rome. You're carrying their money in your pockets. You're being paid their money. You're using their money to spend and buy things. And if he wanted to, he could have expanded it even more. Because under the Roman government, that administration was doing things in their community that they were taking advantage of. For example, there was security. The Roman Empire had established a peace in the land where you had basically soldiers all over who brought some kind of protection from criminals and raiders and such as that. You could live more at peace under Rome. Likewise, they also put up public buildings all over in their cities. I mean, once they conquered a nation, they then wanted to build the nation as part of the glory of Rome, and they would build public buildings in your community. A gymnasium, for example, a public civic building and such as that, and that's something people benefited from. There was also an infrastructure they built, the highway system. Roman roads were great. You know, before the days of Rome, others had built highways, the Babylonians, the Persians, and such as that. But when archaeologists are digging their ruins, what they'll find is the crumbled stones, their roads came apart so easily. Roman roads were of a different kind of makings. So much so that today, archaeologists will dig away the dirt, they'll find a Roman road, it's still there, it's still intact. They were superior at building roads and transportation systems so that you could travel from country to country, free to cross the borders, protected by their security, and you could do business and trade, bring it back home, the profit. You see, these critics of Jesus who say, we want nothing to do with Rome, they are living firmly attached to Rome. They're taking advantage of all the benefits of the Roman administration, including money in their pocket. And they stand here and ask Jesus, do you think we ought to pay taxes to Rome? What Jesus set them up for is a basic fundamental principle. It's the principle of give and take. And that is, if you're going to take and receive, don't be surprised if you also have to give something back. Because life is all about the give and the take. There's nothing free. There are no free lunches, we say. And so, if you're going to take and receive the benefits of Rome and put it in your pocket, then how can you object when they ask you to give something back? And if you don't want to pay the taxes, don't be taking the benefits. But if you're going to take the benefits, I think you know your answer as to whether or not you should pay taxes or not. What he gave them wasn't so much say yes or say no, but he put in front of them the hypocrisy of their position. So what was the classic answer he gave? What was the verse that we've memorized? It's our text verse for the day. Render unto Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, and give to God whatever belongs to God. That was his final answer. Render to Caesar what belongs to him, and you've got it right there in your pocket. So now give back what properly belongs to him. It was a great answer to the question. Now, the New Testament will come along and continue to teach this. The Apostle Paul will teach it in Romans 13. In Romans 13, he talks about being in submission to the governing authorities. In verses 7, he says, now, when it comes to this governing authority that's there, he said, you want to be sure that you give whatever is due. So if it's taxes that are due, then pay your taxes. If it's respect and honor, then show some respect and honor. Now, think about that. He didn't give you a qualifier that said, now that's if you like him. If you don't like the guy in charge, you don't have to do any of that. Now, the guy in charge for Paul was a Roman emperor. It was Nero, one of the worst and one of the most hostile toward Christianity, but that didn't change the rules at all. It's not a matter of which party's in charge and do I like them or not, do I support their policies or not. This is the way you treat those who are in authority because you receive the benefits of the state. And so that's the Christian thing to do. And that's really what is being set up for us by the New Testament. We have a Christian duty to give what is due, and that's whether you like the people or not. It's what we do. It's a hard thing for us to remember, especially when we don't respect the people that are in charge. And yet still, we're called upon to be respectful. Now, he also threw in one extra answer here, and the extra answer was, and give to God whatever belongs to God. And they didn't ask that in their question, but Jesus gave it back to them because that helped to round out his answer, make it a good, strong principle. I'll show you that answer one more time. Render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and then give to God what belongs to God. And by that, you have covered your bases. You've covered authority on this earth, the kingdom under which we live here, as well as authority in heaven and the kingdom we long to be in one day. And you give each their due, and there's no conflict between those two. You give what is due. Now, when Jesus got done giving this answer, the last verse says that these Pharisees and Herodians who brought that question to him, it says they were thoroughly amazed. For a moment there, they forgot he was their enemy, and they just said, wow, that was a great answer. Now, that didn't last long, because then they're going to have to go back to the enemy mode, and that is they're going to retreat, tuck their tail up between their legs, and fall back, try to figure out what's my next tricky question we can throw at Jesus. And they will come back with another one. We'll see that next week. But in the meantime, Jesus set forth a teaching that is classic. We still to this day remember what he said. Render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Give to God what belongs to God. We haven't forgotten it, and it's a great principle to live by. In fact, Peter was there on that day. He would have heard this confrontation, heard Jesus' brilliant answer. Peter later writes his own version in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17. Peter tells us, as a general rule, here's the way you live your life as a Christian. You are to show respect to all people. You're to love the believers. You are to fear God, and you're to honor the king. Yeah, we have something that's due to all the people around us because we follow Christ. And Christ has taught us that you give what is due to everyone. Whether it be on this earth or in heaven, you give what is due because that's the way we live out the teachings of Jesus. We render to Caesar and we give to God. Father, we thank you for this reminder from your word, because there are times we do things we don't really enjoy. We don't want to do it. We don't like it. Doesn't matter. We do it because it's right. We do it because it's what our Lord taught us to do. And when we have those occasions, may we have the courage and the determination to do that which is right. We thank you and pray in Jesus' holy and blessed name. Amen.